sports fans. If you are in Southern Ontario, we hope that you survive Snowmageddon. Thanks for checking out the Sportsline Podcast. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Folks, we are talking football. And although the Hamilton Tiger Cats do not hit the football field until May 24th, the roster has been rounded out with some major acquisitions during CFL free agency. For new general manager Ted Govaya, he'd rather build a winner from the ground up, but
I will say that I'm not a firm believer in building teams through free agency. I'm not sure it's the way I'd like to go, say, next year. I think that some sports that works for a lot easier than football. There's just too many people involved in football. But after meeting with the guys that are here and knowing the coaches that we brought in, I thought, we can make a run right away. And so that's why I dipped into the free agency pool as much as I did.
Well, let's bring in someone who was at the Tiger Cats meet and greet press conference. No stranger to the pod, Hamilton Spectator columnist, Hamilton Tiger Cats beat reporter Scott Radley. And Scott, I'm just going to say from that clip right away, I thought the key words from Ted Govaya were, we can make a run right away.
I don't disagree with him. I look at what has happened over the last couple days, yesterday, Wednesday with the free agency, and for reasons, and we'll talk about them, I actually feel as optimistic for this team as I felt about a Ticat team in a long time. Now, we do know this is Hamilton. It's been 25 years. Stuff happens. You may replay this in the end of October, and we both look like idiots, but there's stuff here that makes you think maybe they finally have got something in place here.
What are your early impressions of the new general manager? And I know both of us in different meetings with the media kind of poked and prodded. I think we know him on a personal basis, but we were kind of poking and prodding him. But what do you think this team needs? As an opposition guy, you kind of thought of what you had, your feelings about what the Hamilton Tiger Cats were. He, of course, wouldn't really answer the question. He was very, very, straight-laced in the way he answered that question. But so far, I know no games have been played, but what do you think about him?
So anytime you have someone who has waited a long time for an opportunity like this, you have to believe that he has spent a lot of time thinking, what would a team look like if I was building it? What would a Ted Govaya, if I'm him, what would a Ted Govaya team look like that I want to put on the field? And you have to believe and assume, and I do, that he has a vision for what it is. Now, the challenge is that it's not an expansion team. You're not taking over a blank slate. You have to work with what you have. The good part about that is he does have some really good pieces to build around. So one of the really interesting things, and yesterday it was interesting that, he pointed out, well, I didn't intend to go out and target Winnipeg Blue Bomber players, but boy, they're gonna have to put a little blue into the black and gold because this team has so much new Winnipeg Blue Bomber flavor in it. They've got, I think it's 7 guys that are coming in here. And, so you say, okay, Ted Govaya and the team he's looking at. I think if you're a Ticat fan, if you're going to be bringing in all kinds of guys from one team, you're relieved that you're bringing it in from Winnipeg instead of Calgary, for example. You've got guys who have won. You've got guys who have played. You've got guys who know what it's all about. I always wonder about how much that thing about, well, they come from a winning pedigree. I always wonder how much that really means, but clearly everybody in the sport believes it means something. So there's a starting point. You've brought in all this winning, and a guy from Montreal, Stubblefield, you brought in all this winning attitude, this winning pedigree. Maybe that's one of the things that finally gives them that bump that when tough times come, when you have a tough game, that you got guys who have been there and say, we can deal with this. That's one bit of it. But he's also brought in some pretty darn good players, too. Not just because they're from Winnipeg.
Well, you take a look at that list there. Now, I know there were some free agent signings of guys that haven't played in the Canadian Football League prior to this. But this is the list of 10 that I have it down to. And as you said, 7 of them are Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Now, I would think that these are guys that obviously he might have actually brought into the Bombers program. And I think we hear this all the time when it's someone new, you bring in or you carry along people that you trust. but I think he trusts the fact that they can help build this team into being a winner. And I look at that list there, and I feel like every one of those guys are needed by the Tiger Cats.
So look at the ones. So the guys, if you keep the screen up for just 1 second. So you've got Cole, Garbutt, Fox, Lawler, Wolotarski, Dobson, and Johnson coming from Winnipeg. I think Johnson was Winnipeg. Anyway, all the other guys.
He was.
But Stubblefield from Montreal, a Grey Cup champion recently. He's got that. Amos from Toronto, all CFL player. You've got Jacob Zott, who's a former MAC guy, who's been around the league now, but just depth on the offensive line. Like these pieces are, these pieces make sense. And so it's not just that he decided, I know all these guys and I trust them. And Garbutt yesterday, he was looking at it the other way. I had a relationship with Govaya, and that helped convince me to come. It goes both ways, but it's. I don't think it's just that he trusts them, and they are players for the most part, and maybe for all parts. I don't know, but on its face, many of them really make sense for this team.
A lot of the additions, at least the impact additions, I think that people are going to look, whoa, obviously Kenny Lawler's the big guy, probably the second highest paid or at least the highest paid non-quarterback in the league, coming in at probably about $275 a season. Now, he's proven, the guy, unfortunately, he's never played a full season. And there have been injury issues there with him throughout his entire career, whether it be with Edmonton or Winnipeg. But he's an outstanding, if not an elite receiver. I would put him in that category. Receivers, in my total, when I look at the roster right now, there are 17 receivers on the roster right now. 17. Now, not everyone, not all of them are going to stay. I put a list together of the guys that I think probably have the best chances of making the team. And I know there's probably going to be a newcomer that slips in there somewhere. But good gracious, look at the size of these guys. This is, like, if you're Bo Levi Mitchell, you're licking your chops.
So one of the things, when you look at Kenny Lawler, let's go back for a second. So last year, the problem with the Ticats was not offense.
No.
The problem for the first 2/3 of the season until Chris Jones arrived was the defense was awful. And you had one of the most productive offenses in the league, but you had a defense that was terrible. And so one of the things that you look at and you say, all right, when Govaya comes in to start doing his thing, maybe you don't even worry about the offense. You had an offensive lineman you had to replace because Beard went to Edmonton. And they got Dobson, which is a great replacement. Otherwise, the line is intact. But other than that, maybe you say, all right, let's put all of our eggs into the defensive basket because that's really where we need help. But then you look at bringing in a guy like Lawler and you say, have they done something here when you now have him and Tim White, who can both be deep threats, and you've got Shamar Bridges, who's coming back from injury, but I expect will be ready to go. You've got Keandre Smith, who they re-signed. You've got
Hakunavanu.
It's in my off-season form. You've got guys that if you can take from that at any time a package of 5 that you can put on the field, and I would argue would be the best 5 receiving package in the CFL. And if Bo Levi Mitchell is anything like he was last year, if he can maintain for another year, if Greg Bell at running back is like he was last year, and again, if that offensive line with 4 of the 5 starters returning, and they were very good last year, if they can hold up, you may have created a situation here where, defense is nice, but you may not need much defense because you can outscore your problems. And I know that defense, we just saw with the Eagles and with the Chiefs, that defense wins championships. We know that. We know that there's times when you're not going to be able to just score at will. But my goodness, I see no reason, with a few ifs, with health, that's always going to be the big one.
Doubt.
And with, as I say, with Bo Levi Mitchell staying at the form that he was, because don't forget, last year was a return to a form that he hadn't had for a few years. But if those things happen, I believe they averaged 28, 29 points last year. Is it crazy to say that you could add 5 or 6 points a game on average to that with this group? I don't think so. And you do that, you're making it really difficult, no matter how great or mediocre your defense is. You're making it really difficult on other teams if you can put up that many points.
I don't think Tim White. It's hard because he was an all-star last year, but I think he can be better than he was last year.
He had a terrible start.
Right? Like it was a terrible start. We were all talking about the dropsies and all the things that were going on with him. And, is it in his head? All that kind of stuff. And he tried, and I think he really battled through it. I mean, there was some media stuff going on. I think there was some stuff from Tiger Cats fans that, maybe he took, to heart that really bothered him, might have been on his mind. If he's anything close, can you imagine Kenny Lawler? You got the size. O'Leary Orange is another guy that's sneaky good too. With his body size. I just think that this could be. I think the last person to pass for 6,000 yards might be Kent Austin. This could happen.
Well, yeah. So Tim White is an interesting one because he had that drop in the season opener last year against Calgary that would have given them the win, but they didn't. There was a touchdown pass that he dropped, and then the fumble against Saskatchewan the second game at home in the home opener that gave Saskatchewan the win. And all of a sudden, the guy who had just signed a huge contract, all the spotlight is on him that he can't deal with the pressure and he's not. So now he was obviously much better as the year went on. And now that Lawler is there, which is going to take some of the pressure off White because he's no longer the deep threat and the guy, and you're another team's defense, you're going to have to decide, because you do have two legitimate deep threats now. You're going to have to decide, who are we putting our better cornerback on? Who are we really going to focus on down the field? And you know what? Maybe that frees Tim White up to be the guy that they signed to be the year before.
Can I interrupt? I think you got those two guys there. I'm sorry, I'm putting Shamar Bridges in the deep threat category.
Yes.
He's a guy that actually, I think he would have probably had more receptions than anyone else on the team.
Yes. I don't disagree with you, except you can't just have everybody running straight down the field. So you're
go deep.
Yeah, but you've got two complete burners in Lawler and White who can do that. So now this does other things for other receivers as well, because you're going to have to. We saw it again using the Super Bowl. I know it's not the CFL, but if you're the Chiefs. You had to decide, are we going to try and stop the run, which was going to kill us, which opens up passing lanes for other guys. And yeah, they did well against the run, but the passing game ended up hurting them. You can't stop everything in football. So you have to pick where's the thing that's going to hurt us the most and try and stop that. And so if you're now really worried that White and Lawler are going to be burning down the field and getting open, you have to drop some guys back, and that's going to open up the whole middle of the field for the running back, for Greg Bell, because you're not having all your linebackers. The linebackers are dropping off now to help. Or those 10, 15, 20-yard passes that a guy like Shamar Bridges with his big body, he will be dining out on. So, as I say, I think the Lawler thing, to me, with the receivers you have, assuming there was a lot of injuries last year. They lost guys. Assuming they come back healthy, Lawler may have looked like overkill, especially when he's a big-ticket guy. But I think that it really, especially, and with a guy like Milanovic, who is is an offensive coach, I think you create some real problems that we may, Amos should be a help back there. Stubblefield should be a help back there. But we may see some of the old style CFL 45 to 38 games in Hamilton this year. But I think that those 45 may often be Hamilton points.
You just brought up the name Amos, and I love him. I think this acquisition is unreal. I think we've seen an issue with the Tiger Cats secondary over the last couple of years,
at least,
where it's just every game it's a different five, right? With Stavros Katsantonis being the guy, the safety, and he even got hurt last year too. I think this is going to turn from a question mark, where you're actually trying to allow some guys to grow, and now under Brett Monson, again, it's all going to start out. It's a new defensive coordinator with a new way of thinking. If they can get these guys all playing together on the same page again, injuries will be important. Boy, they're tough.
But again, if you're a fan, I think you're nervous about the defense, only because the defense has given you reason to be nervous a lot for the last number of years. And, Monson may be the answer. He may be the guy who picks up the mantle from Chris Jones and carries it, and that defense that looked really good the last third of the year carries on. We don't know. We just don't know yet. And so by adding even more firepower to the offense, what I think you do is you buy that defense some time. And when those mistakes happen early on while you're trying to get figured out, you probably buy them a little bit of grace. That, yeah, you make a mistake, you give up a bad touchdown, don't worry about it, we can go down and score. I find it hard to believe that this team with these guys on offense, and the biggest thing is the offensive line that, again, was really good last year, 4 of the 5 guys coming back, and the guy you're replacing him, the lost guy with, is an all-CFL player. I find it hard to believe that they are not going to be able to score and score a lot.
Salary cap, which I thought was really interesting, moved from $5.6 million a year. It's been kind of hanging around there from the last couple of years to about $6 million, a little over $6 million. But it was interesting, the timing of when this announcement happened. It was really when the legal tampering window had opened and a lot of deals were getting signed, but obviously had to be approved the week after with free agency. And you had veteran players like Zach Collaros saying this is ridiculous.
It was.
And I think for someone like him, he sits there and thinks, maybe we would have been able to keep a Kenny Lawler if this announcement had come out a little earlier. You already are not a fan of the timing of it.
It seems I can't explain the timing of it. I can't explain why they did this, because it doesn't make any sense. How do you run a business when you have no idea what your budget is, or when you are working within a budget, and then all of a sudden you've just made all your changes and you've cut some staff and you've done this and that, and they go, oh wait, sorry, our budget just changed. That it doesn't make any sense. So I can't explain. Maybe there's some reporting out there that's better, but I can't explain why the CFL would have announced this in the midst of all this. Because again, you may be right. Lawler may have decided to stay in Winnipeg if the money had been better. Other guys may have decided to stay other places. It was just a weird thing to say in the middle of the process. Suddenly there's all this money. And funny, when we say all this money, if you watch the NFL, you go $400,000. That's not even going to get you a practice roster player. In the CFL, $400,000 is a couple good players on your team.
Heck yeah, maybe even 3 good players.
Could be.
Which leads us to this, right? Because the announcement comes from the commissioner. I think you and I both like Randy Ambrosie as a man.
Sure.
Got no issue with him. Always that. He's been a guest on this show, always opening, a pure lover of the Canadian Football League. But the reality is, I thought his job had expired. He's still the commissioner right now. The salary cap just went up. What's going on with the commissioner? You and I have been on this very podcast debating over who should be the next commissioner. It is now approaching March. Where's the new commissioner?
So right now, Randy Ambrosie is football's equivalent of Justin Trudeau. And it's not even like it's legitimate. Like, he's announced, I'm resigning as soon as my replacement is found. It's exactly the same. Justin Trudeau is out running around the world making deals and shaking hands, and he's a lame duck. He's not even a guy who it makes no sense. And it's kind of the same with Randy Ambrosie. And now you start to wonder, I don't know, did this salary cap thing happen because you have a lame duck commissioner? I mean, I don't know how that would work. I don't know if stuff is happening in the office that they're just not running through him as much because it doesn't make any sense. He's still the commissioner. But it does seem like one of those things that, you might want to accelerate here. You might want to find how many people, honestly, how many legitimate candidates are there who would be someone to take over the CFL commissioner position? 10?
Legitimate. That was a number I was going to. There has to be at least 10. Now, look, whether they're experienced in a position like that or not, there has to be at least 10 people.
Okay, but there's not 100.
No.
There's not. So my point is, he announced, I can't remember when he announced, 3 months ago, 4 months ago,
more than that
he is going to be stepping down. should this not have been priority number one?
That's what I would have thought.
We're going to identify our 10, 15, whatever it is, people, and put the move to get this thing going and get this guy in place long before the season starts. Ultimately, I suppose in some ways it doesn't really matter if this guy or woman is introduced on opening day. But surely in the off season, when stuff is happening, you want someone who's going to inject their vision, bring their ideas, and not have, stuff like this. And there's been a couple other things, and I'm trying to remember what it is right now.
Is there an Atlantic Bowl? Is there a Pacific Bowl?
There's stuff.
There's stuff going on in the league,
and it's unclear,
right? And I don't know who's leading the ship.
And I can't. And I'm drawing a blank. I was talking to someone. I wrote about this, and again, I can't even think what it was now. I'll think of it in a minute.
TV contracts,
where someone said to me, or the question was raised: is stuff happening? It was the schedule. The schedule came out very late this year.
The schedule issue.
And so somebody suggested, is the schedule coming late because teams see a commissioner who's not going to be there and are refusing to accept what's there and are seeing there is an opportunity to push against something to get better dates, which great if they got the better dates, but it also meant the schedule was out 2 months later than usual.
For sure.
Which we'll see if that had an impact. But I got to tell you, I wrote about the schedule coming late, and I got so many emails from people saying my summer vacation, what week I booked to go to the cottage, or whether we go away, or work plans, or whatever else is, I want to buy season tickets, but I also want to see whether I can get to the games. I want to see if I'm, if I buy season tickets and I'm going to miss 4 games, it's not worth it. I'll buy them individually. I think these things mattered, and we'll see if it had any impact on attendance. I don't know if it will, maybe not, but these are things that some people have said, does this have something to do with the fact that Ambrosi is on his way out the door, so he doesn't command the same governance strength that someone who we know is going to be in that position
then I feel sorry for the man, if that is the case. Like, if you're trying to operate a league still while while you find my replacement, and that everything I suggest maybe gets turned down,
and we don't know that's the case. But it could be.
Yeah, well, but it's opened up the speculation for all of this. Is what I don't like, right? Like, I mean, I thought there would be a nice, clean ending. There'd be like, we start hearing throughout the media, and there's so many people that cover this league in such an outstanding way that all of a sudden names would pop up, whether it's on TSN, 3 Down Nation, Sportsnet, you, me. I've heard nothing. I've heard not a
Who do you think it's going to be, though? You got to have a name in mind that you think is going to be, or who do you think is behind the scenes getting serious consideration?
There's someone I don't know.
Think so?
Yeah, it's someone from that's on the come up. Is what I think it'll be. Someone that nobody knows, at least unless you're deep into sports industry.
See, I think they would be. I don't know if he'll get the job, but I think they would be crazy not to at least have considered 2 people who both have Hamilton connections, as it turns out. Mike Morreale has run the CEBL, has brought it up from nothing to a league that's got some real traction now. He's a young guy. He knows the league. He's been involved with the Players Association. I am hoping, and now nobody's talking, including him, but I am hoping they at least reached out and said, are you interested in interviewing? And Pete Diakowski, who's with the Players Association, really smart guy, knows the game, is passionate for the game. Again, I'm not here arguing as their agent for them to get the job, but if you're going to be doing what you said, and I think you're right, to not just find people who know the game and have business acumen, but also are younger people who maybe be in this position for a while and have some fresh ideas. Those are 2 names right off the bat that jumped out to me that it's like, I hope they at least thought about them. I hope they at least reached out, and even if they don't offer it to them, hear some of their ideas, if nothing else.
I think Morreale makes so much sense and would be the leading candidate if he didn't have a gig that was probably better than the one that is being offered to him. I think he has a certain amount of control about decisions that are made about the CEBL, that the ownership, who aren't real sports guys, that they have so much trust in him. At least that's the way it's been explained to me. And that this is a building project that continues to work out well in the CEBL.
I agree.
I just think that if you were to take on this, it's so tricky because of the Board of Governors having so much control over what the commissioner can do and what he can't do. Does he really need that? Diakowski, does he have the actual business acumen in terms of a league? Certainly has, as you said, with the Players Association. Yeah. Absolutely, you're no doubt correct there, and has been in that world for some time now. What about Neil Lumsden?
Another perfect name who's got all kinds of business acumen. And all of these, and those three, and it's a good one you brought up there too, because it's a name that was mentioned before. I'm not arguing that any one of them should be given the job. I don't know. I'm not in an interview with them hearing, and you're right, Mike Morreale may have no interest in this because of the position he has. But if you're the league, these are names you would think that are young, ambitious, lots of good ideas in the sports world, love the league, which maybe to me should be beyond business and everything else, should be the number one thing. And I'm not suggesting this of Ambrosi or anyone else, but not I love the league because now I'm involved in it and I have to love the league. I mean, a real deep down love for this league. Those are people that I think at the very least should be in the process, in the conversation, in an interview. And if they choose not to, fine. That's, of course, no one's having a gun put to their head to take the job. But I really hope that some guys like that, or women, if there's women out there who fall into that category, that the league has made overtures to them to at least see if they're interested and see if they have ideas and see if it's something that they would take on.
I think Ambrosi is that guy. But I think he loves the league. But I think he, to a fault of not his own, was almost too much of a cheerleader. In times of stress, we can go over his entire 7 years of his. I think in times of stress or when things, sometimes there were questions that weren't answered or were answered in a cheerleader fashion. And I think that annoyed a lot of people in the media, across the country. And
one other thing about this that I would say is I hope the governors, you're right, they have a lot of control, but I hope that they're not looking at this is our chance to pick a yes man who will just do everything we say. If you are one of these governors, you know what, the league, the fact that the salary cap went up meant revenues went up. So something went well for the league last year, but you are always with the CFL, I hate to say this, but you're always 1 or 2 or 3 bad decisions or bad years or something away from another crisis. How many crises have we seen with this league over the decades? And so you don't want someone, I think, who's just going to come in and do whatever the governors say. You want someone who will come in and lead the league, lead the governors, lead the players, lead the fans. Again, neither of us are in those meetings, those interviews with those people to know whether the ones we named or others have it, but that's what you want to find, I think. Not just someone who goes, governors, you want to increase ticket prices across the, sure, whatever you want, lead.
That's going to be a real hard, because you had guys like Jeffrey Orridge that tried to be that way and tried to battle back against the Board of Governors, and his tenure wasn't all as long as that we all thought it was going to be.
No.
Mark Cohan, maybe he's a guy that would come back. Who knows? Want to get in a couple of things here. Great talking Ticats with you, and boy, I almost, as I said, I think yesterday on the 6 o'clock music cast, I'm like, can we start the season already? I'm so excited about the Tiger Cats and their prospects right now.
You mentioned, one more thing. Yeah. You mentioned in the intro that they start May 24. I believe that's Mother's Day, as it was Mother's Day. Can they 1 year start training camp not on Mother's Day? Honestly, for people who cover the team, for people who want to go watch practice, it's like you're choosing now between football and your mom, and that's a losing battle.
Again, something for the new commissioner to consider,
there you go.
Right?
Not Mother's Day. Start it on the Saturday, even if you can.
I want to get your thoughts on a couple of things that are in the sporting world right now. We just saw the first first, I guess this is the inaugural and going to be the last Four Nations face-off, and Canada and Sweden opened up the tournament, this 7-game tournament, which in essence replaces All-Star Weekend, thank God. The game was, I don't even know if you needed to be an NHL fan to appreciate at least what I saw last night. Up and down, the pace was incredible. It didn't resemble an all-star game that we'd seen in the past where guys are backing off and they almost didn't care. What were your thoughts? I thought it was an exciting game.
I'm going to make an admission here that I didn't watch the start of the game because when this thing was going, I was like, I don't know.
Like many.
I wasn't sold on it. It seemed prefabricated. Like you don't have the Czech Republic, Czechia, you don't have Germany with some of the best players, you don't have Russia in there. It was like, and then about, how long was it? 2 minutes into the game, I see the tweet with that power play goal. And then by midway through the second period, I kind of went, I'll give it a look. I'll see. And then I was in and sold and will be watching now going forward. And one of the things that I think struck me about it is we get very excited about the Olympics because it really matters, and yet is this and this is sort of as I say, sort of a made up, almost forced thing. That what are they really playing for? But was the Canada Cup not that essentially at one time? Yeah. The World Cup at one time, it was kind of that, and as long as the players look like they care, and they did, then you and I and everyone else watching, I think, can buy in and care. It was, had they gone out there and turned this into a glorified all-star situation, I think the reverse of me would have happened. People would have tuned in at the start, and by midway through the second would have turned it off. Now it's the other way around. If the players are buying in, and the players really this really seems to matter to them, I think that it will do just fine. Better than just fine.
The players were completely engaged.
Yep.
And I thought it was outstanding. And I started to feel it, and this is where I may have differed from you, where I was listening to a lot of the pregame clips this all started Monday, where teams were getting together and practicing. But the words that were coming from everyone's mouth, and then when Gustafsson, the goaltender for Sweden, started saying, the pressure's not on us. The pressure's all on them. They're the ones that are going to have to make the crowd all happy, and not just kind of like, ooh, you just tossed a grenade, dude. And I'm like, people are starting to talk about this, and you started to think about, okay, well, yeah, Nylander, Pettersson, like the Sweden side, they got skill, and you look at all four lineups, and you're right. It would have been way easier to sell to people if Russia was involved, if the Slovaks were there, Germany, Switzerland. There's tons of Swiss players in the league now. But in a short tournament, 7 games, I'm frothing at the mouth. I can't wait till Saturday night to see Canada-USA. I can't wait to cheer for Canada against Austin Matthews.
Yeah, and again, it seems like it is entirely... the entire thing required buy-in from the players, that they really cared about it, and that it wasn't just our all-star game and we're all buddies, because they are. I mean, look, they were playing. Mitch Marner was playing against William Nylander last night, and he's going to be playing against Austin Matthews on Saturday. And you know, if they just go out there and they don't really hit, and they go into the corner and they bump, and there's nobody would have cared. But they really that one game, we saw one game. But if that's any evidence, then the players do
and two
care.
Two injuries from that game.
Yeah. So if they do care, you've got something here, and they look like they care.
I think what also helps too is that you have, and I think Sid talked about this, is that, you know what, this is one thing for me, and obviously I'm near the end of my career. I don't have a lot of these left. This may be the last time on a sort of best on best event that I can participate in there. But there are guys like Austin Matthews. There are guys like Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, who have never represented their country.
Yeah, not really.
Like you have to go back to 2016 with the World Cup of Hockey.
Or World Juniors.
World Juniors. And as a pro, they've never put on the maple leaf or the red, white, and blue. And that, I think that alone has excited these players.
You know what I'm really interested in, too, from last night is Mitch Marner scores the winning goal in overtime. What's been the narrative for Mitch Marner?
Invisible in the playoffs.
And you wonder if something like this for a guy like him, I mean, Leaf fans are obviously tuned into this like everyone else, but most of the people listening are probably Leaf fans from this area. You really wonder if a situation like this, a tournament like this, where he has immediate success in key moments, if it does something to make him more productive in the playoffs psychologically, that it lightens his load or what, I don't know. But I watched that last night when he scored that. My first thought was, I wonder if that changes what happens come the spring in Toronto, that he now has some confidence that he can do something in the playoffs, because it's been a as everyone knows, it's been a huge struggle for him many times that he's been in the playoffs with Toronto. Maybe this is something that goes even beyond. I mean, we all want Canada to do well here, but maybe it spills over into everything else too, which would, I'm sure, excite an awful lot of people in Leafland.
Absolutely.
If this is a launching board, a springboard to bigger things for their team.
One last question here, and I brought up the statistic on the 6 o'clock news. I'm just going off the top of my head. I dating back, I think since Sidney Crosby has been the captain of the Leafs, the Canada are like 25-0,
26-0 now.
Like, he's amazing. Like, I mean, I know you didn't see that pass, but it's everywhere.
Well, no,
like. He's amazing. He's so easy to cheer for.
And he's 38 now?
30, going on 38.
38, and still can play, clearly, but also still has the real desire to do it, which is a big thing, too. And, there was something that was said after the game last night. I think it was during the post-game interview, that many of the players on that roster grew up watching him. Like, he has become the elder statesman. And very often when you have the elder statesman type player on any team in any sport, he's broken down and he's there just because he's a figurehead or because, whatever. Crosby's the elder statesman who commands that respect, but he's also still one of the very best players on the ice, which is really unusual. When Gretzky was playing in Nagano, for example, he was still okay, but he wasn't Wayne Gretzky that was the Wayne Gretzky from the prime of his career.
No.
And Wayne Gretzky commanded huge respect, but you had Eric Lindros, you had other guys then who were probably, arguably anyway, better players at that moment in their career. Yeah, Connor McDavid is and Nathan McKinnon are probably, well, not even probably, they are at this point better players. But you watch that game yesterday and you go, at moments, in those big moments, Sidney Crosby can still do everything they can do. Maybe not quite as fast. Maybe he doesn't have the dead straightaway speed that they have. But if you're drafting a Team Canada right now, I know everybody's going to say, well, I would take Connor McDavid first. And I would take Nathan McKinnon second probably. And I may take Cale Makar third. But for a 38-year-old to even be in the top 5 guys out of this country that you would draft, and I would say absolutely he would be in my top 5, that's unbelievable.
I think you got to pick him number 1 because he's the captain, and
he steps up.
And he steps up and he leads. One last thing here. Today represents the opening day of the Blue Jays. Pitchers and catchers have reported to Dunedin. Okay, some moves. Since the last time we've been together, the Blue Jays have made some moves. I think if you were going to score them A, B, C, or D plus, whatever, they've actually moved up some marks with some signings. As we talk about the excitement of the Tiger Cats and, of course, the Four Nations of this Four Nations face-off, how excited are you for Blue Jays baseball?
If you had signed Max Scherzer 10 years ago, I would have said, that's unbelievable that you got that guy. If you, honestly, Bubba, if you polled 100 diehard Blue Jays fans, how many of those 100 do you think would say, my expectation is they're going to finish last in the AL East this year? I say it's at least over 50%, maybe closer to 70%.
Guerrero, Santander, a 3-4? Boy, that's a lot of runs.
So we started this by talking about the Ticats and being optimistic with the asterisk, though, saying if Bo Levi does what he did last year, and we're not saying he's not going to, but if that happens, and if Shamar Bridges gets back from his injury and looks like the guy he was last year, and if Tim White, there's so much potential, but there's ifs. You have to and health and everything else. Santander had 43 homers last year?
He was in the 40s for sure.
Is he going to do that again this year? All right, if he does that, yeah, you've suddenly got a really imposing 3-4 part of your roster. And if Biggio can return to form, great.
Bichette.
Biggio, yeah, if he returns to form, it'll be in Atlanta
Dodgers
now.
Or something like that, yeah.
So, yeah, there's ifs, but boy, I'm not expecting 42, 43 homers again from him. I don't know what I expect from Guerrero because he's had stretches where he can tear the hide off the ball and other stretches where he's been pretty mediocre, quite honestly, which I think is part of what's tying up these contract negotiations, because I still don't think they know if he is the greatest player of his generation.
For 3/4 of last year, he was the best hitter in baseball.
He was very good.
Unbelievable.
Yep, no. And I think that's what's tying them up in knots a little bit, because are we confident that that's the guy we're signing if we're giving him 10 years and $500 million?
You got to trust.
I don't know. I think that these Blue Jays have become the state of Missouri for me now. It's the show me. They're the show me state.
Yeah,
you gotta.
exactly.
There was nothing last year that gave confidence that this team was just on the precipice of a breakout, and they did almost nothing this offseason to change that. Meanwhile, you've had other guys, other teams. I mean, the Yankees, they lost Juan Soto, but they've brought some other guys, and they still have Aaron Judge, and they've got, the Red Sox have just improved. They just signed
Bregman.
If he's got anything left, I don't know. But and ultimately, even if the Blue Jays, what did they win, 75 games last year, give or take? Let's say they bump up to 90 and they make the playoffs. And let's say then they catch lightning in a bottle and they run the American League. You're not beating the Dodgers. I'm sorry. The Dodgers have taken so much of the mystery, it seems. Unless the Dodgers have the Dodgers have more guys in AAA that would start for the Jays.
They're loaded.
So even if they suffer some injuries, it's not like they fall off the table. And so I don't know. I'm finding it hard to be excited for the Blue Jays right now. And one of the other things that you really get, I really get the sense of, is that Blue Jay fans are a pretty forgiving group, quite honestly, over the years. They have been...
Absolutely.
They get on...
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter what happens, they're ready to go and to dream big. But I'm telling you, if this team gets off to a poor start, if this team comes out of the blocks and does not look good, the noise about Atkins and Shapiro is going to be unbelievably deafening, because the Santander, like those signings, and the Scherzer, maybe buys a little bit of grace, but it has been loud about how they have disassembled this team and not really done much. The farm system is non-existent. Prospects are not there. We've talked about this many times, but they can't have a sputtering start and then have Scherzer go out with an oblique injury 2 weeks in.
It's going to happen.
It will be disastrous for them. It will be disastrous for them if that happens. They need to have a fast start. And the worst scenario, perhaps, would be if they go into spring training and decide and, go like 27-8 or something like that, which we've seen before too, and then come out of the blocks for the regular season and wet the bed. Because I think the worst case scenario would be to build up some hopes. It's either better for the Jays to gradually, like to not do much in spring training and then all of a sudden show up and be good and everyone's excited. You now build hopes and then disappoint. That's going to be a tough one for that front office, but we'll see. I expect a great season for the Blue Jays this year. Will be 4th place in the AL East. I can't see them. They're not going to beat the Yankees. Maybe the Orioles have lost some guys, so maybe they're taking a step back. Boston, I don't know. Tampa finds a way always somehow.
Always.
I don't know. I just don't know where the Jays, where these 10 or 15 wins that they need to become a good team. I don't know where they're coming from.
Blue Jays, stay tuned. Four Nations face-off, stay tuned. Tiger Cats, stay tuned. Thank you so much, Scott. Great stuff as always. Great talking Ticats with you. I really do mean it. I think it's going to be a fun season. Long season, but a fun season. And boy, 26 years, maybe that's the number.
We're into the second quarter century.
Don't say it.
Do you think they give out something to the fans on the first? You know what I would like to see? You got to go. I wrote about this today. I found this to be a great story. So Reggie Stubblefield, who's signing on new DB for the Ticats, it just sort of popped up in the press conference yesterday. I didn't know this.
Get the sauce.
His great-grandfather was the guy from Stubbs barbecue sauce. I didn't know that. Maybe everyone else knew it. I didn't know it. Look, I'm not a business guy. I'm not a marketing guy. If you're the Hamilton Ticats, do you not have to somewhere set up a barbecue pit like Boog Powell's in Baltimore? Set up a Stubbs barbecue pit out in the round area outside the stadium when you're tailgating or whatever. It is a perfect match. It has to happen now, doesn't it? A Stubbs barbecue pit. It has to be something they do.
One thing I'll always say about the Tiger Cats, they're good business people.
They know where to find an opportunity to make some money.
I would be surprised if that's not already in the works.
If they didn't know, because I didn't know yesterday, if they were watching the same press conference, surely someone in that office went, bing.
To be honest, I knew about it when he got signed because I'm looking for visuals online or whatever, and everything kept coming up in this old man talking about this ribs and sauce and whatever, and then I started to look at who he was with, and I'm like, is that Reggie with him too? Like, whatever, and I'm like, okay, this is really interesting. But I'm glad you guys brought it up at the presser conference.
And it's delicious sauce too. I'm not getting paid anything, but apparently I bought a bottle last night.
Oh, you did?
Well, I had to, take a picture of it for story in the paper today. It's like, well, I may as well just buy one, and it's good. It's some good sauce.
Yet another reason to read the Spectator, folks. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you.
All right. That's your Sportsline podcast for the day. And if you've just seen and heard, we love talking sports and barbecue sauce. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline podcast, do want to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. If you have something to say, please comment. We love when you've got something to say. For the outstanding people that put the Sportsline podcast to air, we thank you so very much. We'll see you tomorrow.